stand up. Let's stand up. Yeah. And just relax your arms by your sides and just go ahead and gaze forward. Okay. So let me, since it's everyone's pretty much first time, I won't be demonstrating. So just a heads up. There's nothing that you need to look at me for reference. But just start to notice, how do you take in the space around you? As you're gazing forward, what is your peripheral like? What is your spatial awareness like? Do you have perception of the front of you and perception of the back of you? How big does the room feel? And how are you supporting yourself with your feet? And could you please slowly turn to look over one shoulder and notice which side you decided to turn to, and come back to center and go ahead and look over the other shoulder. Come back to center. Was there one side that was easier? So explore this a little bit more. Go ahead and look over the same shoulder or the opposite shoulder and the other shoulder. And as you continue to look over shoulder to shoulder, you can also start to look around the room. You don't have to be limited to just left and right, but notice how much of your spine is involved in this motion that you can perceive. Can you feel anything in your pelvis? Can you feel anything in your feet? Okay. So we'll come back to this at the end of class. But now go ahead and please lay with your back to the floor and put your head support out of the way, because we will start with you laying back to the floor. So every time we come in contact with the surface, we have an opportunity to utilize that surface for support, or sometimes we're not using it for support. So if it's comfortable, lay with your legs long, your arms relaxed by your sides, and notice how you are receiving support from the floor. Are you laying in a way where you're completely lax and you're just waiting for the floor to catch you? Or do you have any perception that the floor is giving you enough support that you would be able to move quickly in any given direction? Just some food for thought. Now I want to start the class also by saying, as we progress into the movements, I'll tell you what Moshe Feldenkrais used to say. He used to say, the movements are an idiotic thing. I'm not after flexible bodies, I'm after flexible minds. So with that being said, if we are doing a movement that doesn't gain your interest, that doesn't feel comfortable, take a break. Don't continue to do something just because I'm talking. You have ultimate autonomy of yourself here. So with that being said, from a straight leg position, don't actually move. Hear my words first. Could you start to think about rolling to one side, but don't actually do it. And when I ask you to roll to one side, do you already have in your mind which side you want to roll to? Can you notice that there's an intuition, there's some sort of neurological sense within you where you already know you would roll to that side. It's the better side for you to roll towards. And so let's test that. Slowly roll towards the side that you intuitively were thinking to roll towards. And notice how you come to roll to that side. And roll to your back again. And feel the process of what you did to roll towards your side. That go to the same side again. And feel, what are the preliminary movements you do to roll yourself to the side? and you come back to your center. And now compare. What is it like when you roll to your other side? Does it immediately feel different? Roll to your back again. How do you find support from the ground to roll yourself to that side that perhaps is unfamiliar? And you can return to your back. So a lot of what we'll be doing is going to lead us into rolling. I encourage you to do not give yourself the boundaries of your mat. So I'm going to have you each roll side to side again, but it's just one floor. If you roll off your mat, it's totally fine. Does that give you a different experience if you're not focused on staying on your mat? Try rolling to one side. Who cares if you fall off the mat? The ground is still there. Come back to center. Roll to the other side. And come back to center. Whichever side feels intuitively most yummy inside, roll to that side and go ahead and grab your head support. You're going to lay on your side. Make sure again you have adequate support. If you find that you need more at any time, just let me know. I'll grab it for you. But bring your knees up in front of you. Have your feet stacked, your knees stacked. Find a comfortable place for your bottom arm. And then the top arm, you're going to stand on the ground so that your elbow is bent and your forearm is more or less close to your abdomen. Somewhere that everything feels comfortable, you're settled. And begin to do a motion slowly of moving your top shoulder slightly forward. And then return to where you started. And we're going to begin just doing this simple motion several times. You move your shoulder forward and you return to where you started. And could you please pay attention to the way your face is connecting to the support beneath you? And could you go slow enough that you can track the way that your face changes against the pillow beneath you as your arm moves forward? And notice within yourself when you have the most attention and the least attention of the motion. Sometimes when we're guided into that initial state of move the shoulder forward, we're really paying attention on that forward. But what did you do to return yourself to the starting place? And as your shoulder moves forward, do you tend to find that you're landing on an inhale or an exhale? When you're moving your shoulder, what happens to the shoulder blade that lays over the back of your ribs? And does the simple movement of the shoulder moving forward and to the return, does it feel smooth? Are there any bumps along the way? I'll give you one intention for the class, and that's simply to make your life easier. So always explore what you can do to make the movement feel nicer and easier. So the next time that you come to that starting position, pause for a moment. And now, with that attention on the way it feels, start to move the shoulders slightly backwards and return to where you started. Try to get less about the action of doing something and more about the sensation that's associated with the movement that you do. So when your shoulder moves backwards, can you feel any change with the way that your right or your bottom shoulder is connected to the floor? Does anything change with the way your face touches the support beneath you? And now take a pause, please. And your bottom arm, if it's comfortable, you could modify if needed, but your bottom arm, could you let it lay out long in front of you? And we're going to revisit that motion that we started with, the shoulder moving forward, but this time, could you generate the motion from the shoulder that you're laying on? What would you do with the shoulder that you're laying on to move the top shoulder forward? Could you find a way in which the arm that you're laying on draws slightly backwards and somehow propels the top shoulder forward? And then as you start to little by little find that, refine it. Sometimes when we come across a new concept, we approach it with speed, we approach it with intensity. But I promise you, if you approach it slowly, you'll figure it out. And you'll figure out how to make it pleasant. So then pause for a moment, and let's see how this could work if we wanted to take the shoulder backwards, the top shoulder, not the one being the initiator, the bottom shoulder. So what could you do with your bottom arm, your bottom shoulder, to help you draw your top shoulder backwards? Could you imagine that somebody that you care about was gently grabbing the bottom arm and gently pulling it forward? So gentle that you really just feel the skin moving. But somehow that gives you a little extra support in this drawing of your shoulder backwards. And then pause for a moment, let your mind reset. And now as we keep going with class, we're always thinking about integrating. So let's see what happens if you go back to the motion of taking your top shoulder forward, returning, and taking it backwards. Can you find some sort of inclusion of your bottom arm that starts to happen naturally? Where now perhaps it just kind of makes sense to use the bottom arm against the floor. You start to expand your awareness from one place of your body to an added place of your body. And with that, you notice your breath. You notice your head, your jaw. Can you soothe yourself with this motion? Can you be kind enough to yourself and move yourself in a way that feels very calming internally? And the next time that your shoulder is starting to go backwards, could you start to let that roll you towards your back? And again, don't limit yourself with the boundaries of your mat, but when you're ready, roll towards your back, and we'll take a quick pause on our back. And you can scoot your head support out of the way so you can come to your back and have a comparison to when you first laid with the floor. And you relax your arms, and if it's comfortable, your legs could be long. And you just notice within yourself, did you light up any awareness of your body? Can you feel a difference between your right shoulder and your left shoulder right now? Do you find support from the floor in a different way than you did before? Maybe yes, maybe no. But no pressure, no expectations. From this long-legged position, could you please slowly roll to the same side you were on before? And stack your knees and your feet together. Bring the head support in a good place. Stand your bottom hand onto the floor in front of you. And now think about your top knee and your top leg. And could you start to do a similar motion that we did with the shoulder with the top leg and the top knee? You're going to do this without lifting anything, but could you simply slide your top knee slightly forward and then return? And
You're moving from the hip, or you're actually moving the leg?
both, may I?
Sure.
Okay. You just let it glide and you return. So that's a great question. Are you moving from the leg or are you moving from the hip? It depends. Everybody has their own individual approach to movement. What is yours? Where do you start this movement from? Does it land on an inhale or an exhale? Could you pause the motion? Could you take a moment to feel the way that your bottom hip is touching the ground? The way that your ribs that you're laying on are touching the ground? The way that the leg touches the ground, the lower leg, the foot. Sense the sensation of your skin coming into contact with the surface. And could you do something with the part of your body that touches the surface to gently propel the top leg into a glide forward? Notice that you can change the initiation point. So let's stay with this idea that you're using the bottom hip and bottom leg and bottom lower leg against the floor to move your hip slightly forward. But now, could you do something with the way you touch the floor to move your hip slightly backwards? And so now you start to carry yourself into this engagement with the floor where the knee, the top knee, slides forward and backwards. And gradually fade out of any determination or I need to do this, and start to instead listen what's happening through the rest of your body. What's happening to the ribs that you're laying on as you slide your top knee forward and back? What's happening to the top shoulder? What's happening to the way your face touches the towel beneath you? Can you find this way where you're not using any one specific place, but you're actually in this place where it's the whole of you that moves? You equally move the bottom as you do the top. You equally move your head as you do your knees. You equally move the top shoulder as you move your hips. And what about your feet? Can you feel any motion occurring at your feet? In fact, pause for a moment, please. Could you play with the concept that your feet are the initiator? Doesn't mean that you have to lift a foot, but how could you initiate this motion from your feet? Could you find some sense of the top foot sliding forward And that gradually cascades the movement up your body so that the rest of you responds into rolling one direction. And then the top foot gradually rolls a little bit backwards, and it's a cascade effect that it gradually pulls the rest of your bones into the motion. And then you can change that. What if it was your head that was the initiator? How would you lead with your head, your nose, your lips? Could you feel that you can start the motion at the top, and if you listen carefully enough, the motion can gradually cascade down your body to your feet. And then eventually, could you please, in one piece, start to roll backwards. Eventually, you'll find a moment to straighten your legs, and you'll lay with your back to the floor. And notice, what does it feel when you lay here right now? Notice your breath, your attention. Do you connect differently to the floor than when you started? And if you were to roll your head a little bit side to side, which side is easier? Does the movement travel down your body, or is it just a head that moves? What are your tendencies? And the next time that your head is rolling to the opposite side to which you've been laying on, could you please gradually start to lay yourself to roll to that side? From the straight leg position, pay attention moment by moment. What is it you do to organize yourself to come onto your side? Bring your head support into a good place. Stack your knees in front of you. Stand your top arm in front of you. A lot of times in Feldenkrais, we do things on one side. And I've noticed some people get a little bit thrown by it. They're like, well, now I feel completely different on one side, and we didn't do my other side. But let's not think of ourselves as two-sided, but rather we're just one connected whole. So everything that you were doing on the other side already affected this quote-unquote side. So could you please start a movement of your top shoulder moving forward and backwards? And can you already find this way of integrating yourself? Just start to pull little pieces that you remember from the other side. Can you incorporate your bottom arm and your bottom ribs? Can you start to glide the top leg forward and backwards? Can you include your head into the movement? Can you initiate from your feet? Can you imagine that every time you do the movement, with your intention being to make it pleasant and easy, the movement keeps refining. Your breath starts to feel calmer and easier. The movement starts to get smoother. You feel the way your ribs are rolling on the floor. And then maybe you feel a piece of you that doesn't quite connect. But notice how you can gradually take yourself into this right away onto the other side. And then pause. Find a place where you're not forward, you're not backwards, you're just comfortably on your side. And could you start a new motion of moving your top shoulder slightly upwards towards your head? And then slowly return to where you started, and let's break it down just like that. The shoulder slides slightly upwards and returns. Is the shoulder just a shoulder, or does the shoulder connect to your neck and to your head? So your collarbone connects to the very front top of your shoulder. So you could imagine to yourself that as you slide your shoulder forward, your collarbone in the front has to have some sort of response. And because of the way the shoulder joins with the ribs and the neck spine, there needs to be something that happens in your neck in order for the shoulder to move upwards. So could you explore this idea that the shoulder moving upwards feels more like a fall upwards? It gently moves into the space between the shoulder and the neck, and your neck is pliable and soft and allows for the shoulder to move upwards. And then pause for a moment. And now let's bring the bottom arm into the picture. Think specifically your bottom armpit and the ribs that you can feel touching the floor. What can you do with those ribs to help you move your shoulder upwards? If your only way to move this top shoulder was via the bottom ribs and shoulder, what would you do? And let's play with this a little deeper. Could you pause for a moment, please? And what you'll do next is already gather your attention on that same area, the top shoulder, but pay attention to what you do with your top shoulder if you were to take that hand, the hand of the same shoulder, and you were to slide it under the ribs you're laying on. And then you take the hand out, and you repeat this several times. But pay attention not to the moment that your hand comes under your shoulders. Pay attention to what you do to make space for your hand to come under your ribs. And when you make space for your hand to come under your ribs, what happens to your shoulder? And now every time you make space for your hand to come under your ribs, either slide the hand down or up, so you always enter from a different place. Maybe it goes all the way down to the low abdomen. Maybe it comes right underneath your chest. And is there anything that is occurring with your top hip when you do this? And then go ahead and leave that alone for a moment. You can stay resting on your side unless you need a moment to lay with your back to the floor. So let's place our intention not on the making space for our hand, but on a gentle press of the hand. So back to your side if you're willing, and place your hand again under your ribs, either towards the shoulder, towards the hip, but now wherever your hand lands, gently, with care, press the ribs into the hand, like you wanted to just iron out your hand a little bit. And then slowly lift off your hand, reposition your hand higher or lower, and gently press. And notice what is happening to the top shoulder and top hip every time you press onto your hand. And then take your hand out and just rest your hand. And could you have your top shoulder and top hip in your awareness? And could you slowly move the top hip and the top shoulder in opposite directions? So the shoulder goes upwards and the hip goes downwards. And as the hip goes upwards, the shoulder goes downwards. Think about the line that your shoulder and your hip line up in. And can you keep on that line? And can you have a level of specificity within you that the shoulder doesn't gear off the line and the hip doesn't gear off the line? We're simply working with up and down. And can you feel that you have a way to engage your bottom side to assist this motion? When you're ready, let's take a rest. Gradually lay to your back. And once you've laid with your back to the floor, take a moment, maybe move your head support out of the way if you need to, and just feel yourself. How do you connect to the floor now? How do you find support from the floor? From this straight leg position, in one motion, could you just roll yourself to lay on the opposite side? Bend your knees up in front of you. Adjust your head support. Stack your feet, stack your knees. Think of the way that you're touching the ground. And let's start to take the bottom hand, or the top hand rather, and slide it under the bottom ribs. But now you have a different awareness. So rather than taking time where we only focus on the lift and then we only focus on the press, you lift, you gently press into the hand. And then the next time you do it, you place your hand either higher or lower, and you feel the way that you can interact your spine, your ribs, and your waist with the floor to create a motion of separating the top hip and top shoulder and drawing the top hip and top shoulder together. And of course, we know that we have a head that's attached to all of this. So how would your head move in this way? As you continue to explore the placement of your hands, could you be extra attentive to what you're doing with your skull? Is it possible that when you are making space for your hand to come under you, that the way your head connects to the surface changes and moves a little bit upwards? And when you press on your hand, can you feel that you bring your head to a different contact, maybe a little lower on your face? It's as though your head could tilt laterally in relationship to your ribs and to your spine, which really is a response from your neck. It's a response from your spine, your ribs. And then eventually stop the little peekaboo hand and just do the motion of the shoulder and the hip moving away from each other and towards each other. How could you initiate this motion from your feet? What would you do with your feet to give you this access in your spine? And then let's leave that alone. Now, if you need a rest, you take a rest, but Could you gradually start to straighten your legs? There's nobody next to you, it's only the three of you. Could you roll right to the other side? And just in one piece, floop. And then once you get to the side, readjust and you can bring yourself back onto your mat. So remember, every layer that you've added onto this, every way of integrating, it's now within you. Stand your top hand somewhere in front of you. Have your knees stacked, your feet stacked. And could you start to move your top shoulder forward and your top hip backwards? Find the place where they come into the same line and then reverse, so the hip goes forward and the shoulder goes backwards. But every time you come to that line where the shoulder and the hip are in the same line, pause for a moment. That way you can start fresh. That way you can attend to these subtle details of how you interact with the floor to support this alternating motion between the shoulder and the hip. And notice, does your head follow your shoulder or your hip? If you've been finding that your head follows your shoulder, change it. Every time your hip rolls back, your head rolls back. But that would mean that your head is going opposite of the shoulder, so go gently. And smooth it out. And then pause for a moment. And now begin to draw a circle with your top shoulder. Is your circle a circle or an oblong or an oval? Can you really sense the arcs of the circle? Are there some parts of the circle that start to feel a little bit bumpy? Take your time. If you're finding bumps along the road, just go slower and make it smaller until you can calculate in your thought process, how would you do this motion in a way that truly feels circular? And I'll give a hint. The smoothness comes usually with integration of the whole self. So if you've been hyper-focused on your shoulder, expand your attention outwards and see how you can incorporate the rest of your body into this movement. Then reverse the circle. Does it feel different going this way? Smooth it out. Refine it. Then pause the movement of your shoulder, and could you circle your top hip? What direction can you move your hip in to begin the circle? Reverse the circle. And now can you circle your shoulder and your hip at the same time? When we added in this layer of slight complexity, what did you do? How did you approach it? Did you stay attentive and caring to yourself? Did you maybe get too determined and tighten somewhere? Once you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. And now pause, and let's try to team up our circles. So the shoulder and the hip move forward together. They move in opposite directions, so the shoulder goes upwards, the hip goes downwards. Then they do the bottom arc of the circle and they glide forward together. They come towards each other, away from each other, forward together. See if you can keep finding this synchronicity between the way you move your whole self. And then reverse. And I'll guide you from the beginning if you'd like. Your shoulder and your hip go backwards together. They go away from each other. They go forward towards each other, backwards together, away from each other, forward together, and back. And then pause. And could you, in one piece, glide yourself to roll over to the other side? And you just feel what it's like to just do one big roll, like a child rolling down a hill. And then you could always readjust to come back on your mat if you prefer not to be on the floor. So you understand we're playing with these circles now, but let's be more attentive to our head and our neck. And I want you to really sense within yourself, how can you include the motion through your neck spine and through your head as your top hip and shoulder go forward together, away from each other. They arc backwards together, towards each other, forward together, away from each other, backwards, towards each other, and continue that circle. But what do you do with your head, your breath? If you find, oh my gosh, I was holding my breath, take a pause, refresh, and come back. If you find that you can find this rhythm through the whole of you, where you just know that you're using your bottom self, your top self, your side self, everything moves together, reverse it. Reverse the circle. And then pause. And could you please slide your top knee a little bit upwards so that you can grab onto it with your hand, with your top hand, and your leg will be resting still, but you're holding on with your, to the front of your kneecap with your top hand. Pay more attention to the part of you that touches the ground and start to use your hand to help you lift your leg a little bit towards the ceiling. And then lower your leg. As you lift your top knee towards the ceiling, what does the weight of your leg feel like? The moment that you're about to lift that top knee towards the ceiling, what did you do with the bottom leg? How can you make your leg feel lighter and lighter? Before you start to actually lift the leg, there's a preliminary organization that must occur with your base. So if your leg is feeling kind of heavy and you're like, whoa, this is turning into a workout, I'm going to encourage you to take longer to lift your leg and think about what you do with your body that touches the floor before you actually lift the leg away from a surface. And gradually take your leg towards the ceiling in a way that starts to roll you towards your back, and then roll to your side again, to the same side.
Oh, it's the
Yeah,
same
same side. And play with this a few times. So now we're starting to expand. Feel what you're doing with your ribs. Can you think of drawing your ribs underneath you as you open your top knee and shoulder towards the ceiling? And then can you stay in that place where you know how to support yourself with the ground to come back? And then when you're ready, lift that top knee all the way to the ceiling, your hand holding the front of your knee, and you just keep going until eventually you can grab onto your bottom knee and you can roll yourself over to the other side. And then take yourself with the top leg leading, top leg starts to lift, and you roll yourself to the other side. One hand holding onto each knee, one gradual motion where you start to float from right to left, from left to right, and you feel, and this might be a good time to just get rid of the head support, you feel that you have this continuous support with the ground to the point that if I said stop where you're at, you could stop and reverse it. Always letting the top leg lead until you feel that the top leg just floats the bottom leg off the ground. And then again, the top leg goes towards the ceiling and it floats the bottom leg away from the ground. And just go side to side, feeling this primitive way of rolling that for some reason as adults we stop doing. And then when you're ready, bring it to lay with your back to the ground. And just notice, how do you receive the support from the floor now? Gently roll your head side to side. Is it just a head? Or can you feel all the moving pieces beneath? Could you recall the beginning of the class where we went from straight leg position and we just rolled to one side? From this straight leg position, there's no boundaries. Don't worry about staying on your mat. Roll to one side quickly. Ready? Go. Roll. Slide your legs long, roll to your back. From those long legs, start to roll your legs to the other side and quickly go. Roll. And slide and roll. There's no time to bend your knees to stand your feet with the ground. You've just got to roll like a log in one piece. And notice the timing of when you bend your knees up, when you slide your legs long, and feel the barrel of ribs that you have, this beautiful roundness that you have, and how you can interact with the ground. And then you can go ahead and lay with your back to the ground. If only we had hills to roll down here in Miami. When you're ready, Roll to whatever side you'd like to bring yourself to seated and gradually to standing. Take your time, and when you stand, stand with your feet to the floor off of your mat. Gaze forward and just sense the way that you sense yourself. Feel the way you're organizing yourself in relationship to gravity, and notice your peripheral. Notice your sense of the space around you. Has your peripheral changed? Has the size of the room changed? And then start to look around the room. You can look left, you can look right. And as you start to look around, can you feel this way that you can incorporate everywhere you look through your whole body? Can you feel something in your feet, in your pelvis? And you can go ahead and start to walk around and see what it feels like to walk in a way that has skeletal integration. Because every time your foot meets the ground, there is force that needs to travel up the skeleton through to the top of your head. How do you meet the ground with every step? Thank you all for coming. I appreciate having you all here. Thank you so much.